Hi everyone, welcome to Kitabi Cabins. आज मेरे साथ है हिंदौल.
Hello.
Right now, I'm obsessed with this particular book
Mhm.
that I really want to talk to you about. So, the name of the book is Notes on Grief. It's by Chimamanda. उनके father की death हुई 2020 में when the lockdown had just started for the world. She lives in US. Her family lives in Nigeria. सारे airports locked थे. She could not travel home. There's this proper anxiety of will you be able to say the last goodbye? And she's captured it so beautifully in Notes on Grief. What I really like about this book is कि इसमें वो raw emotions आते हैं. She's not tried to filter them out. These are like dear diary में जैसे आप लिखते हैं how you feel. It's just that. And you know sometimes जैसे Bollywood में we are used to people being very mellow when they are grieving. Most of the times you see people lost, etc. And she talks about you realize it's not just that. It can be full of anger.
Right.
And you won't even realize where your anger is coming and where it'll flow to.
So is it like she is figuring the insights out while she's writing them, or has she like already analyzed her feeling and now she's
I think these are
inspired?
basically notes. It's about I'm feeling a certain way. I'll write it down. And this is something I've recently started noticing, and I've started writing my journal regularly because as you start writing, things become more clear. And this is what happens in the book. As soon as you start getting closer to the end, you realize it's coming a full circle. What grief is, how you're supposed to deal with it, how you're not supposed to deal with it, what is okay when you're grieving, what is not okay when you're grieving. You know, when somebody passes away or somebody goes through something that's very heartbreaking, we say, oh, it's for the better. Or if somebody passes away, maybe they're in a better
They're
place.
in a better place.
And she writes very beautifully about this, like, hey, should I not be the one knowing that because I was much closer to him when he was alive? That is what she writes, and she says, you know, I have given such advice to my friends and now feel so shitty about giving such advice.
The point that you mentioned about language is so much more important. Like it's something that I think all of us kind of figured out during COVID. You inadvertently had
Inevidently.
one way or the other you had someone in your circle जिनको आपको condolence message देना पड़ता है. So you can't write thoughts and prayers to everyone, right? मतलब eventually you have to talk to them as a human being and not like a content creator. Like one of the worst things I was told by someone, that things that you should not say to someone is like, let's say they're undergoing some kind of loss and you tell them I know exactly how that feels. In that situation, no one wants to know ki, okay,
You've
great,
been through that,
this
but-
is common, this is not happening just to me. One of the weirdest things about grief is that no one is actually ever prepared for it. There is always a first time when it happens to you, and you obviously it never happens to you by choice, so you are always caught unprepared. Jaise if
you know, even I feel even if you prepare for it, even if you know, okay, these are the signs that will happen, this will be the whole process of grief. I will first be in a denial phase, then I'll slowly start accepting it. I'll be angry with, you know that you're doing this, but you still don't accept it.
Great that you mentioned the 5 stages of grief, which are denial, anger, bargain, depression, acceptance. When you read about it, it feels like ये mutually exclusive है. Like there is a time when you're only in denial, when you're only in anger, and so on and so forth. But the thing is, you can be in multiple stages
go
at the
back
same
and
time.
forth.
Yeah, that's when you realize that feelings are a bitch. So feelings can like mutually,
For lack of a better word.
yeah, coexist at any point of time. And there's a very beautiful short film, actually, an Indian short film. It's called Death of a Father. It's an animated short film. What it's about is that obviously there's the main character whose father has passed away, and he is undergoing the rituals that happen in a Hindu family. Ki cremation ho raha hai, then shraddh hai, and feeding everyone. So he's just undergoing everything, and at the end he kind of realizes that through the entire process, he has not grieved actually even for once. That he's not realized what he's actually feeling. And I kind of feel that that is the whole point of like all the rituals that happen, that it's kind of accelerating the moving on process for the people.
Basically, you're occupied with things. And when everyone walks away to their homes at night, you sit there alone and you realize how the gap it has left. And this is something that was very pretty here in the book, which I really loved. Not pretty, but it is something I really liked, the idea. where sometimes we talk about, hey, that person was too young to die, so it's sad. Oh, unki to umar ho gayi thi and everything. And she talks about, like, my father was old, but that did leave a gap.
Right.
So you can't tell me to not grieve just because he's old and he had to die because of his age and health. And that hit me because there have been times where people lose elders. But I know that it is acceptable to grieve even when you are grieving somebody who had to, when it was supposed to not last long.
Right. So one of the things I personally saw was when my grandmom passed away, and my grandfather would obviously start telling them what happened, and she was on the ventilator and everything. And the first few times when he was saying it, he broke down. But the thing is, you have to do it so many times that it kind of becomes like a routine.
Right.
Like it's a story that you have to tell everyone. So eventually it kind of becomes very mechanical.
Yeah.
Is it that I have started loving my grandmom less, or is it just that that particular story has become like mechanical? Ki, हाँ, ये हुआ, फिर ये हुआ, फिर ये हुआ. So it's like grief is, I think, you kind of see different
I
things.
read a lot about it because I want to be prepared, but I know I'm not.
I'm kind of scared of reading about these things क्योंकि फिर और अजीब ख्याल आते हैं. Like I'm very scared of losing people who are close to me. Like it's one of the very proper fears that I have in life.
There's this another book that you were talking about how mechanical it becomes, and I wanted to talk about this book, which is called Grief is the Thing with Feathers. There are two little boys. There is one father, one mother. The mother passes away, and this family is visited by a crow, which is signifying grief. Now, the entire book is their journey of dealing with the loss of their mother, accepting it at the end. It's actually, I think, inspired by Ted Hughes' The Crow. But I think from my understanding, initially it's very difficult to understand what grief is saying, what the crow is saying, because they themselves have not accepted it. The husband breaks down in between and he says, oh, so now she's not going to do this the same way, no, this the same way, or etc. etc. And slowly, it also shows the kids and the husband moving on. They still love her, but how they've built another space for them. And this reminds me of another poem by Agha Shahid Ali, where he's written a eulogy for his mother. And in that he writes, I will never forgive the universe for letting me get used to a universe without you. And grief is just not about death. Grief can be anything.
Yeah.
It can be the loss of anything. Your friend, a friendship, a relationship, an object, for example, could break you.
Like I experienced something similar very recently. So we had our family's house was in Bhopal, and that's where I was born, and my initial years, everything happened. So it's literally my childhood was that house, and due to a lot of reasons we had to sell it off. Obviously it wasn't in a condition where we could live inside it because no one was staying there, so creepers had grown over it and it was in a very bad condition. So we were staying somewhere else and all the paperwork happened, and then on the last day we went there. When I went there, it just felt like an actual person had died, because I don't know, it was a very weird feeling, and I've carried the randomest of things with me as much as I could. I found Pokemon trading cards which I had made some crayon these inscriptions on, so I carried those with me. My grandfather had kept my first broken tooth in our freezer. I don't know why it was there, and
I have 4 wisdom teeth, so
yeah, and he had written a note that on this day my grandson's first tooth was broken, and here we keep this. So it was
really
it
sweet.
was lying in a freezer, and eventually I know that it will all become trash for me, right? This is not something that I need, but you don't know what that moment is like.
Yes.
So yeah.
I have a similar story. So my brother and I, we spent our lives living across the state of Himachal because my father had a transferable job. But as I went to college and my brother is now in college, my parents decided that now is the time that when our kids are off to hostel, we have to move back home.
Right.
Now, we used to have this old house which my grandfather built. And my father, when he got married, or when he started earning, he built another house. Now, he gave this away to the rest of the family, and the old house was the place where my parents needed to build a new house.
Hmm.
So we had to pull that down because that house could fall anytime. So I lost my grandfather when I was 7. And every memory that I have of him is from that house.
It's from that house.
Because he loved gardening and I love gardening. Everything that I know about it, I know it from my grandfather. And there used to be 2 small lawns. One used to be the smaller one, which he gave it to me because I would ruin his bigger lawn. So that was his. Mine was the smaller one, always in a mess because I did not know how to plant grass. I was hardly 5 or 6 or 4 then. So every time a tooth would break, my grandfather used to tell me that a plant will grow in this. Like so when you get old, you don't have to wear fake teeth like I do. I have to. You can have your own set of teeth. So I would plant all the teeth there in that small lawn, and I would give it water also. And then there were small bushes that my grandfather had planted. I don't know what plant that was. And उसमें toffees लगती नहीं थी, लगाते थे. And I used to think, oh my God, my grandfather's bushes are so unique. He can grow toffees. How cool that is. मतलब मेरे यहाँ पे तो teeth के plant ही नहीं होते. So I had like high respect for him because of that. And when we had to build the house, we had to, of course, demolish the entire site. It happened when I was away. I was in college, I think, first year. And I remember coming back and I couldn't stop crying. I mean, even when I go back and now I have to sleep in that house, there are times when I have the dreams of the old house. Because it was just very special. I remember my mother screaming at me and me running and hiding into a room and crying in that particular room. I had a crying spot.
So there was this very small bit that happened like when we were collecting our things, which is like almost like a short story in itself. Me as a person, I'm very emotional in this particular moment, right? When I'm like collecting my things and packing them and whatever. And we also have a flight to catch like within a few hours, so we don't have a lot of time. So I wanted to see the terrace one last time before like because obviously it will get demolished soon. वो था कि मुझे जाने से पहले वो देखना, but we are also in a rush. तो उसकी चाबी नहीं मिल रही थी. इनिशियली थोड़ा इतना लेट हो गया कि इट वाज लाइक अभी ठीक है, देयर इज नथिंग वी कैन डू अबाउट इट, तो ठीक है जाते हैं. Then we came back to the hotel and like I was packing my bag and stuff, and in my pocket like I had filled in some whatever random things I could find, I had filled them in, and I found a key. तो मैंने पापा को दिखाया कि ये है चाबी, ये I don't know what key this is, एक बार चेक करके बताओ. And he saw it and he laughed and he said this is the terrace key. So yeah, there is my Premchand story. But yeah, this happened. So on that note, please read Notes on Grief, and yeah, do call your grandparents when you see this video.